Okay, so have you ever tried talking about herpes? Like in the dating world?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It can be kind of like daunting, to say the least, but
Mm.
someone shared this guide with us, and it's like, wow, they really thought of everything.
It's interesting, they go beyond just the clinical stuff,
Yeah.
which we know is important, but they really dive into the social and emotional side of it.
Yes. And like how to actually navigate those conversations.
Yeah.
They even have scripts.
Yeah, which is so helpful.
Super helpful. But one of the things that jumped out right away, to me at least, was this idea of like reframing rejection.
Oh, interesting.
Because that's a big part of it, right?
It is.
Is feeling like if you're putting yourself out there and you're being honest, that it's going to be this like huge rejection.
Right. And it's like, are you rejecting me as a person?
Yes.
Or is this just like a compatibility thing? Like, maybe you're amazing, but you love cats and I'm deathly allergic.
And that's okay. It's not you, it's me.
Right, exactly. So the guide kind of puts it in a similar vein, that it's about finding the right fit.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a judgment on you as a person.
And I love that because it's so true. We've all been on the other side of it too,
Oh, 100%.
where we've had those things.
Mhm.
And it's like, all right, well, this is just not a fit for me.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that person.
Yeah.
Like you were saying with the cat thing, like I might be allergic to cats and I'm not going to date you,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean you're not a great person. It's just not the right fit. And so to kind of take that same approach with herpes, I think, can be really powerful.
It takes some of the pressure off, too.
Yes.
It makes it less about this big reveal and more about just, hey, this is something to consider as we figure out if we're compatible.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because one of the things that the guide mentions is that, and this kind of blew my mind,
Yeah.
is that most people with HSV are undiagnosed,
It's true.
which is kind of crazy to think about.
It is, and it really reframes the conversation, doesn't it? You're
Yeah.
not just disclosing a personal detail, you're actually like advocating for better sexual health awareness.
Right. Which we should all be doing anyway. It's
Exactly.
like this is a conversation that needs to be happening more openly. And honestly, when we're talking about like dating and stuff, I mean, we talk about, oh, what are your political views? What are your religious views? We talk about all this stuff that sometimes can feel even more like taboo or awkward.
Totally.
And so this is another thing to add to the list, right?
Absolutely. And it normalizes it, which I think is so important.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about confidence because that's another thing that this guide really emphasizes is like how you present this information can completely change how it's received.
Yes, 100%.
And I feel like that's true for like almost anything in life, but especially something like this where it can be so loaded. There's this great analogy in the guide about a salt shaker.
Okay.
So imagine like you're at a restaurant
Okay.
and you ask for the salt, right?
Right.
And the waiter like chucks it at you
Oh my gosh.
versus like placing it on the table in front of you.
Right. It's the same salt.
It's the same
Same
slurping.
information, but how it's delivered totally changes the experience.
Exactly. And that's such a great analogy because it really highlights how much our delivery impacts how information is received.
Yeah.
And with something like herpes disclosure, where there's already so much potential for awkwardness or anxiety, that confidence, that self-assuredness, it really can make a world of difference.
So it's not about like being arrogant
No, not at all.
or trying to like minimize it. It's about owning it.
It's about owning your truth
Yeah.
and being comfortable with yourself.
Yes. Because I think when you are comfortable with yourself and you own it, it actually puts the other person more at ease. Absolutely. Think about it. When you believe in what you're saying, it naturally makes other people more receptive to it.
Totally.
And in this context, confidence communicates self-acceptance.
Yeah.
It's like you're subconsciously telling the other person, hey, this is a part of me and I'm okay with it. You don't need to freak out.
And, it's funny because when we talk about confidence, it's not just about the words we say, right? Like, there's this whole other layer of communication that's happening.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And the guide actually dives into that a bit, talking about the power of nonverbal cues. Have you ever heard of the 7% rule?
The 7% rule. It rings a bell. Remind me.
So it basically says that only 7% of communication is actually like the words we use.
Wow, really?
The other 93% is tone of voice, body language, facial expressions, all that stuff.
That's wild when you think about it.
It is. So even with the best disclosure script, like if you're sweating bullets, avoiding eye contact, it's going to send a very different message.
Absolutely. It's about like congruency, right? Your words and your body language need to match.
Totally. Like
Yeah.
you're not just saying, hey, I'm comfortable with this. You're embodying it.
Exactly. It's about creating that safe space for, open and honest dialogue, even if it's a little delicate.
Right. Which this topic sometimes can be, but this guide actually gives some really cool, like, practical tips for bringing it up too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you gotten to the part about using dating app prompts?
I did see that.
Yeah, it's like so smart. Like the whole two truths and a lie.
Right.
You can totally use that to be like, oh yeah, I have a weird toe. I once won a hot dog eating contest and I, have herpes.
Yeah, just kind of slip it in there, see how they react.
Yeah. Gauge their openness to the topic.
Exactly. And it just normalizes the conversation right from the start,
It does, because honestly, wouldn't you rather know if this is a deal breaker for someone before you invest a ton of time and energy?
100%.
Like, let's just put it all out there.
Right, rip the Band-Aid off.
Exactly. And there are other, like, proactive approaches, too, that I thought were really interesting. The guide talks about creating a getting to know you questionnaire,
Oh, wow.
which
Yeah.
I thought was genius. Like, before you even go on a date, you could exchange these questionnaires.
I love that.
And you can include things like, when were you last tested for STIs?
Right. Or like, what are your thoughts on sexual health?
Yes. And it just shows you're responsible.
Yeah.
You're proactive.
It's attractive.
It is. It's like, I'm taking care of myself,
Yeah.
and I want to know that you are too.
Totally. It shifts the focus from herpes as this big scary thing to sexual health as like a shared responsibility.
Yes. Yeah, speaking of shared responsibility, one thing I thought was interesting was like reframing disclosure as a sexual health check-in.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's not just about the person with herpes disclosing. It's about both people, like,
Yeah.
hey, we're about to do something super intimate. Let's be upfront about our health and our expectations.
Right. Like responsible adults.
Exactly.
We're so used to like scheduling our dentist appointments, right? Or meal prepping for the week.
I know, right?
It's like, why not add sexual health check-ins to that list?
I love that. It's self-care. It's
Yeah.
relationship care.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership and creating that space for open communication.
Okay, so the guide also has a whole section about disclosure scripts, and I'm all about practical advice. Did any of them stand out to you? I mean, there are so many different approaches, right? Which I think is kind of the point.
Right. There's no one right way to do it.
There's the direct approach, the humorous approach. Like, some of them are almost poetic.
Yeah. It's about finding what feels authentic to you.
Yes. And I think that's really key because, we were talking earlier about the 7% rule.
Right.
And I feel like you could have the best script in the world, but if it's not coming from a genuine place,
Exactly.
it's not going to land.
Your body language will betray you.
Totally. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up is that fear of rejection.
Right.
What if the other person freaks out? What if it ruins the mood?
It's scary. It's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And the guide talks about that, like it acknowledges that those fears are real.
Yeah.
But it also emphasizes that you can't control how someone else is going to react.
Right.
All you can control is you.
Right. How you handle it.
Yeah.
So how do you, like, even with all the best advice, with the scripts, it's still nerve-wracking.
It is, and it's okay to be nervous. Like, I think acknowledging that vulnerability can actually be really disarming.
Oh, interesting.
Because, at the end of the day, we're all just humans, right? And most of us have experienced rejection in some form or another, especially in the dating world.
Yeah.
So to be able to say, hey, this is a little awkward for me, or I'm a bit nervous to share this, it actually makes you more relatable.
That's a really good point. It's
Yeah.
like, you don't have to pretend to be this, like, perfectly confident.
Exactly.
Like, I've got this all figured out.
But it's okay to not have it all figured out.
Because no one does.
No one does.
And it's about being real.
Exactly. Being your authentic self.
Yeah. I'm even picturing, like, someone saying, okay, this is the part where I'm supposed to, like, gracefully disclose I have herpes, but, like, honestly, I'm kind of nervous.
I love that.
Like, just that honesty, I feel like, would be so refreshing.
It breaks down those walls of pretense, right?
Yes.
And it creates space for genuine connection.
Yes. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is, like, the biggest takeaway for people listening?
I would say, you've got this. Like, I know this conversation can feel daunting.
Yeah, it can.
But remember, you are worthy of love and connection.
Yes, you are.
And this guide, it gives you amazing tools and strategies.
It does.
But the most important thing is you and your authenticity.
Yes.
So Embrace who you are, educate yourself, and approach these conversations with honesty and respect, both for yourself and for potential partners.
So well said. And, it makes me think about that quote. I don't even know who said it, but it's like, comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I feel like, especially in the dating world, it's so easy to get caught up in, like, comparing ourselves to other people.
Right, and focusing on our flaws.
Yeah.
Or what we perceive as flaws.
Yes. And we forget to embrace all the things that make us unique.
And those flaws, a lot of times, they're what make us interesting.
They do. They make us relatable. They make us ultimately lovable.
Absolutely. It's about shifting our mindset from what will people think to this is me, take it or leave it.
Yes. And honestly, the right people.
Right, the ones who are meant to be in your life.
They will appreciate your honesty.
Absolutely, and your courage.
Yes. Oh, this has been so good. I feel like if this guide is Herpes Disclosure 101,
Right.
this deep dive was like the crash course to ace the final.
It's a crash course. I love that.
So remember, trust your gut,
Mhm.
find your voice, and just know that you are worthy
You are.
of love and connection, no matter what.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This has been amazing. I love deep diving with you. Until next time.